Welcome to Inspire Others. My name is Gloire. I am the host of Inspire Others. I want to welcome you to another episode of Inspire Others. Our mission is simply to spark hope, encourage education, and show young people that they can create opportunities instead of falling into crime and also into disadvantage. Each episode is a conversation designed to uplift your spirits, challenge your mindset, remind you that your future is in your hands. So, welcome to another episode. We are here to give you motivation, we are here to give you empowerment, and we want to lead with this: each one, teach one. Our message is to be able to empower you and to inspire you so that you can be able to do the same to the next person. Welcome to another episode where we just have conversations with those who are bringing change, those who are called change makers. Welcome. This is Inspire.
All right, welcome to Inspire Others. To inspire, to empower. My name is Glory, the host of Inspire Others. I want to welcome you to another episode of Inspire Others, where we get to talk with the change makers in our community and also in our society. Today's guest is from a different background, from a different, definitely, we're no longer just focusing on the models and this is now a different creative industry. My guest for today, he goes by the name of Prince. But before I introduce him, I would like him to give us a brief introduction of himself, his name, and also what he does. Welcome, Prince.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm Prince, and I'm a writer, director, filmmaker. Work on a lot of different types of things. Theatre, we do short films, fiction films, and then we do documentaries as well. A lot of different things. And then my day job is a secondary school teacher. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've been doing creative work for about the last 6 years, I want to say. Yeah, that's me.
Mm. And sort of, if we were to sort of start off, because most of the times we find a lot of people, what they do today, it's mostly is comes from maybe how they were raised or how they grew up. And
Mm.
why were your early years like?
Okay. Um, so yeah, if you
Or
know me, you know that
what your journey? Yeah.
my life is a story of change and migration all the time. First of
Mm,
all, my mum is Australian, my dad's Jamaican. I was born in the UK. I spent my
mm,
early life in the UK, moved to Australia, came back to the UK at 18, moved back to Australia at 25, and now I'm back in the UK for the last year. It's a lot of movement and a lot of history on both sides of my family as well as Britain. I feel like I try to dig into a lot of the historical stuff that comes there, but also I think my parents are major influence on how I see the world. And then just watching a lot of African American stuff growing up, watching a lot of African American stuff, like films, comedies, and then kind of doing more deep reading of like Caribbean history and African American history and African history.
mm.
And so I guess those are the kind of influences that I have in my life. But I've also lived outside of Britain, Australia. I've lived in Jamaica for half a year as well. I constantly go to North Africa. So I feel like a lot of the experience I have, people I meet, I feel like it's gave me a wide perspective on life, and I try to dig for characters and storylines from what I see or what people tell me about, or maybe my family's history and things like this.
So who did Prince want to be when he was still a child?
Okay, good question. Yeah, to be honest with you, it's so funny. I actually wanted to be the first thing I wanted to be was an actor, I think, because people always said to me, "Oh, you're dramatic. You're a drama king. You always dramatize everything when you're telling a
Hey.
story." You know. So when I tell a story, I'm always like acting it out, and I didn't know that I was acting out because I can't see myself. I'm just telling the story as I see it. But everyone said, "Oh
Mm,
wow, that's you're dramatizing it." And so I was into drama when I was young. So when I was in the UK, when I was a kid, I was on a CBBC TV show. It was just a brief moment, but that was kind of a reflection of the stuff that I was doing at the time. So I was always doing drama when I was a kid. When I moved to Australia, I wasn't. as into that stuff, I kind of became a little bit of a quiet person in a way. I guess because of like racism and alienation and all the rest of it. And I feel like I don't know, I left the idea of being an actor alone, and I guess in my teenagers decided I wanted to be like a writer. That was the thing. I wanted to be this
Right.
deep writer, that's going to live in France and write these novels, whatever. And I feel like many years later, I realized that I could kind of combine the two because I'm not an introverted person. I'm not the kind of person who can actually sit down and write a novel and be quiet. It's not me. And I'm also not really an actor. Like, yes, I can dramatize something, but I kind of like the idea of being in a space where I can talk to actors, relate to them, get that idea of showing them how it's done or giving them a little pointers of how it's done, but also being able to construct a story. So I think it's always kind of been there in my childhood, the idea of being some sort of creative writer, director, actor, whatever. There's always been that seeds of it, but I haven't always been acknowledged it, because there've been many times when I was going to be a DJ or I was going to be, an athlete or I was going to be all these different things. And I didn't really know my path until I was probably about 26 when I realized, wait, this actually works. All these different kind of influences works as a creative writer and director.
I mean, that's a really, really massive journey. Like, since that means when you're still a kid, you always wanted to be an actor. You wanted to be in the creative industry.
Yeah, I mean, it was something I think my parents always pushed me into to do drama. They always pushed me to do drama
Okay.
because I would always entertain adults, I used to entertain adults, like tell them stories, and I was able to get people to laugh at what I was saying. And so I think that they realized, okay, well, we should put you into drama and you should be an actor. And so I think it's always been there. My dad used to read to me at a very young age. I was very well. I wouldn't say I was massively well read, but I was an avid reader as a child. I always loved stories. I loved films. I just obsessed over the idea of these characters and replaying them. And kind of thinking about it, going to sleep and thinking about these characters and these kind of fictional things. And that's always stayed with me. I think that's always been consistent throughout my life, is an obsession with stories, whether that's real stories that people tell me about, whether that's fiction, things that I've watched, things that I read, plays. I think that's probably one of the only constants in my life has been that obsession with stories, I'd say.
So when did you move from the UK to Australia?
So I moved at the age of 8 from the UK to Australia, spent 8 to 18 in Australia, came back to UK 18.
At 18.
Mm-hmm.
What was, if maybe you can remember, how was your, like, the time that you spent in the UK? How was it like? What do you remember of your
When I was a
previous
child,
years?
okay. Yeah, good question. So I guess I would describe it as the first few years of my life, I would say was kind of, I would say comfortable. I felt comfortable in the sense of being a Caribbean mixed race person in the early 90s was such a norm, going to school, being able to relate to it. I didn't really think about race or ethnicity. It was just part of my everyday life. I used to go to my granddad's house and my extended family in Northwest London and I'd be around the energy. My area is very mixed in Southwest London at the time. Indian and black and white. It was all just a melting pot of people, and so I felt quite comfortable. We used to go to the countryside a lot, countryside of England. And I think the more interesting thing about me wasn't that I was Caribbean, it was that my mom was Australian. That was kind of exotic for a lot of people. Like, oh wow, your mom's Australian, wow. And we went to Australia for a couple of times for a holiday. And to me, that was kind of exciting at the time. It was like, yeah, I'm gonna go and see what Australia's
Down
like.
under, yeah.
Yeah, and little small things stuck out to me. So for example, in England we have Brighton Beach, which is a stone beach, just stones, pebbles. And when I went to Australia, the idea of walking on the sand and putting your feet in and leaving a footprint, for some reason that had an impact on me. I was like, oh, wow, you can see where someone went. Like,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I would say the first few years of my life in Britain were just I would say just more content and comfortable. I had very close relationship with my granddad. Yeah, I would say just comfortable living in South West London. It was cool.
And then when you moved to Australia when you were 8 years old, how was it transitioning now from the UK to Australia, the system, even the education system, how was it different?
Mm. Well, I would say the biggest difference for me was that there wasn't any Caribbean culture, first of all, in Australia. And whilst we gravitated towards African people who were migrants, it's a very, very different story about where they're coming from, the music they listen to, their
Mm.
perspective on life. But we lived in an area, so Yoronga at the time. Yoronga was
That's a
we're very
interesting place.
multicultural. Yeah, it's like a very
Yeah.
multicultural area. So we moved there, and that was good because it wasn't like we came straight from a multicultural place in London. We went straight to a multicultural place in Australia. It wasn't as if like we went straight to like some only European Australian area where we're like completely alienated. We moved to an area where I remember one of my early memories of being in Australia was going to Yoga Park and seeing African people playing basketball. They were much older than us playing basketball on the basketball court. And so it wasn't like we got there and suddenly there was no black people at all. It was like we got there and there's black people around us, but they're culturally very different. They're coming from very different backgrounds. And so there was a little bit of miscommunication in some sense, but I still felt happy in Yoronga. I felt like ever since I went to Yoronga, I always felt comfortable in Yoronga, but I wasn't always comfortable in Australia, if you know what I'm saying. So when I would come back to Yoronga at
Okay.
the end of the day, coming from the school I would go to, I used to feel very happy to be in a place where it was a mix of, melting pot of different ethnicities, Vietnamese, Islander, African, and so on, Afghan and all the rest of it. I felt quite comfortable in Yoronga, but I didn't always feel at home in Australia at large. Going to like the Gold Coast or all these areas where you're completely alienated and the subtle racism that would happen consistently was that wasn't nice. And I used to really dream every day of coming back to UK and just thinking, oh my God, I wish I could be around my Caribbean culture again. I wish I could be around British culture again. I wish I could be around these things. And growing up, I'd look at like Islander families and African families, and they have their cultural gatherings and they have their cousins over and everything. And I didn't have that on my side
We didn't have
where
that.
I was like, I'm not getting that. Like I had family on my mom's side, but we weren't really close, and it wasn't the same thing because we're like the only mixed race people in that family, and they were
Family,
from
yeah.
the countryside, and there was a lot of miscommunication. So I feel like growing up in Australia, when I actually got to Australia, it was a very confusing time in my life, very, very confusing. And I feel like I probably gravitated towards my dad as like the person who was basically able to make sense of things for me because he'd spent such a long time born in Jamaica, living in the UK and all the rest of it. And he was such a guide because he was the first time he was living there as well. So he was a guiding force for us because my mom, she was from Australia. She'd lived there. She's not mixed race. She's not black or anything. So she was kind of slotting back into a certain way of life. And my dad and us, we were kind of learning about this new experience.
Wow. And in Yoronga, did you go to Yoronga State school or?
No, I didn't. So that's the craziest thing about it. So, and this is like the double-edged sword of like, I don't know, racism and anticipated racism. So we went to a primary school which was called Fig Tree Pocket. And this was quite far away. So that's like past Indooroopilly. And the reason why we went there is because we had heard, well, my parents had heard it was a kind of prestigious school. And they thought that if I were to go to Yoronga, the teachers would think that I am a refugee and that they would make assumptions about me, about my understanding of English and all the rest of it. And so they sent us to the school, which was kind of, to me, it doesn't make sense. It never
Mm.
makes sense to me. Like, why would you bypass your local school where there's a lot of multiculturalism to a school where it's predominantly white because you think that's prestigious? So that didn't make sense to me. And so we used to travel about 25 minutes to get to school, and it was outside Yoronga. And it was a weird experience. I
Oh,
don't have
wow.
very fond memories. I don't have very fond memories of that.
Was outside of Yoronga, eh?
Yeah, it was far. It was like 25 minutes away. So I don't know why we did that. But anyway, I don't know. I guess I'm not really sure. But when I went to school, when I went to secondary school, I went to Brisbane State High. So
Mm,
I didn't go to Yoronga High, but I can understand that because Yoronga High at the time had, some of the worst funding, some of the worst facilities in the state. So they said, I was able to get a scholarship to get into State High, Brisbane State High. I went to Brisbane State High, and that was cool. But it was cool because it was kind of an urban school, like an inner city school.
right.
There's an urban element to it, but it was kind of the other black kids at the school. Most of them came from kind of they didn't come from the same backgrounds as people that in Urunga. So they came from like they were either adopted by Australian
Mm,
people. They were maybe they're mixed race, but they were more culturally white, or they were like migrant families who just wanted to do the right thing and didn't want to call out racism. So I went to school with
mm,
there was other black kids at State High, but they were very whitewashed and very confused and very weird. So it was strange for me coming from like Yeronga, where I'm hanging out in Yeronga with all, Yeronga guys after
right.
school and all the rest of it and playing basketball. And we've got a certain mentality, and everyone, how Yeronga was back in 2000 and 2007 to 2010, where everyone used to fight and scrap and all the rest of it. And then going to State High, where it's all like whitewashed black kids. It's like,
Mm,
yo, man, I was such a cultural, mix. And this is why I say, like, I feel like a lot of the experiences I have and what I put into my writing comes from all these different experiences of like different cultures, which I've had
mm.
over my life.
What was the thing that helped you to integrate into the Australian culture?
I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever did, my
You
bro.
didn't.
I don't think I ever did, because when I left when I was 18, I left when I just turned 18, come back to UK. And I didn't fit in anywhere. I didn't fit in anywhere. I had I had I had beef on the roads. I had beef at school. I used to swear at the teachers. So for me, I never fit in anywhere, and like and I don't think anyone was able to put me into a box either because
Mm,
there was a certain mentality that I had, which was reflective of, I guess, your own attitude. But at the same time, it also came from my dad, who was very British Western kind of cultured, but still Jamaican and all the rest of it. So I feel like when I never really fit in with the Australian culture, and in fact I rejected it. So any kind of Australian slang, I rejected it. I hated the
mm.
national anthem. I hated the Anzac Day. I was just a rebel, man. I was a
Everything,
rebel.
yeah.
What I mean, I just had nothing to do with it, and it came from the fact that I feel like a lot of people who were migrants came from places where they were experiencing trauma. So, for example, the Vietnamese that came in the early 90s, late 80s, they came from a difficult place, and so they're really thankful to be in Australia. Many Africans came from places which were like maybe war torn or like some sort of crisis going on, so they're really happy to go Australia. I came from a place where I was happy in Britain, so I didn't have that
Mm,
mentality of like I'm thankful to Australia. It was like I don't give a damn about this place. Like, and to know the history and the history of genocide and all the rest of it about indigenous people, I never embraced that side of myself. I feel like in a way I didn't even really acknowledge that my mom was Australian. I kind of was just like, I'm a black man, my dad's British Jamaican, I'm born in Britain. It is what it is, and that's it. And to be honest, I would be even honest with you. I used to tell people that my mom was English. I even tell my mom was Australian. Like I'll go to school and or what's your background? I said my mom's English, my dad's Jamaican, whatever. But it was a lie because I didn't want to
you didn't
associate
want to fit
myself
in.
with what it was to be Australian. So I never fit in, my brother. Like it's only when I came back to Australia after so many years at 25 that I started to appreciate aspects of Australian culture, but it wasn't even Australian culture. It wasn't even Australian culture. It's
Mm,
more so just like the infrastructure, the
the
economy,
industry.
the actual natural land of the place. I never, to this day, have embraced much about Australian culture. I think the only Australian thing about me, in terms of anything specific, is my exposure to rugby at a young age. That's the
Mm.
only thing I'll tell you
Oh,
is like culturally Australian. I suppose is like even when I'm around the mandem here, I'll be like talking about the Springboks are playing today and this, that, and they're like, that's like, bro, come off that. That's not
right.
interesting to us. So my bro, honestly, I didn't really embrace it. But what I will say is that I love the African Australian experience. And that's what I've tried to document a lot in terms of my footage and all the rest of it
Yeah.
is that migrant experience. Because I never, since the age of being a teenager, I wasn't around white Australian like mates. I never really went to many white Australian friends' house or anything. I was more going to people who are migrants So I was learning a lot about their experience and how they got to Australia. And so a lot of those in that insight, informed some of my films and my theatre and stuff like that, because I was like, wow, okay, so these people are coming from a different background, but let me try to understand them and let me try to understand where they're coming from. So I would say more so than the Australian flag and all that, I would say I understand the Australia on an esoteric level and just even the communication we're having right now. You live in Australia, I was living in Australia up until a year ago, but it's not a very Australian dialogue, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So for me, I just appreciate on an esoteric level, and even when I look at the Australian landscape, I used to have this real repulsion of like when they would say the great outdoors, the great outdoors. I used to look at that and be like, I hate going out to the countryside. That's dumb to me, right? But nowadays, I look at it and I go to like if I'm in Australia and I go to the beach, I look at it and say, wow, look at how many thousands of years this place has been around, millions of years, and the indigenous people used to come here, and this used to be a holy, a spiritual spot for them, and they used to, catch turtles and fish. I try to look at it on a deeper level, not just the white Australia kind of ideology, the colonial mentality. I try to look at it as if I'm a black man, I should be able to go on a black man's land, which is Australia, right? I should be able to go to Australia, a black man's country, and live my life and be myself. And so that's why I've kind of peeled back the layers of the disgust and the hatred I used to have for living in Australia and say, you know what? I'm gonna make the best I can with this situation and do what I can.
So from being in Australia, in the UK, and Jamaica, and also
Mm.
you said, is it West Africa or
No, so I guess my ancestry, my dad's side is West African, but I'll say I go to North Africa,
North
quite
Africa?
often.
Where do you feel most at home?
Oh, good question. That's a good question. That's interesting. So I would say it's hard to say, to be honest with you, because my parents live in Yoronga still. Well, my mom lives in Yoronga still. And there's a certain satisfaction I get from being in Yoronga and being around Maruka and all that sort of thing. And I get a satisfaction there. But I also get a tremendous satisfaction from living in Northwest London, where I live in Kilburn, right? And Kilburn is a very historically a Caribbean, Irish, multicultural place. You know, what I mean, look out my window and I see everybody from every different background is here. Harlesden and Stonebridge is Jamaican. Wembley is mostly Indian, Eastern European, but also Jamaican culture as well. And I feel like living in Northwest London is a place where I feel a great sense of peace as well in my heart, because I know that we have a big history in this country. We've been here since the 50s, I think the late 50s as a family, like our extended family. The school I work at is in the area where my dad first arrived in the 60s. So I don't think I can say one place, my brother. I would say
Mm,
it's a multitude. I spent
it's a
more of my
multitude.
life in Britain and Australia, but Jamaica is an important part, and I'd love to go to West Africa. I'm still yet to go. So I've kind of moved on from thinking about one place as being a singular place of home. I see it as I am somebody who is a product of multiple cultures and experiences, and I try to embrace that more so than just saying it's one singular thing.
And when do you learn to accept it yourself? And
Okay, good question. I would say okay, so I had this quite sad experience when I was 25. When I came back from Jamaica. I'd been
mm,
living there for half a year, and I came back to Britain, and I didn't have any money, and I had to ask my auntie and my uncle to go and stay with them and live in Birmingham. And when I was there, I was working at McDonald's, I was working in support work, I did a lot of different jobs. But the thing is, it was a harrowing realization that I don't have a home in Britain. Like I don't have a family
mm,
home in Britain.
right.
And for a long time, since the age of 18, I was thinking, I'll live in London for the rest of my life and that would be me and it would be cool. But coming back after such a crazy experience in Jamaica, the first thing I wanted was to go to a family home in the UK. And I'd see all my friends, they would go abroad, they'd go broke, come back to mom's yard and just restart. And I couldn't do that. And so I came back to Britain and I spent half a year in Birmingham trying to work to just get enough money to come back to live in London. And when I came back to London, I was living in this tiny room in this flat, this house full of people I didn't really know. And suddenly I felt so alone, suddenly I felt so lonely. And I was like, wow, like I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like I'm just working, you know, £10 an hour job, and I've done my traveling, I've done my degree, and I don't know what my next step is. And I feel, you know, kind of lonely. I've done my cultural exploration. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I said, all right, let me go and check out Australia. I haven't been there many years. Let me go see what it's like. And so I went to Australia. I stayed with my dad over there. And I kind of realized, wait, hold on a minute. I can go home, but just that my family home isn't in the UK. I can go home. I can, you know, work out my career. I can do a master's degree. I can figure out my qualifications. I can, you know, work part-time. I can do things that I want to do and live at my mom's and dad's yard. And I'm thinking to myself, hold on a minute. Well, maybe I have to embrace this. Maybe I have to embrace this idea of having lived between two places. And suddenly I started to reach out when I got to Australia, to reach out to people I knew back in the day who used to play basketball in Yeronga, and not actively, not like messaging them, but like bumping into them and asking them, what was your experience? Like, how did you feel
Mm.
when you're young? Because we were all kids at the time. Like we were all teenagers going through things. It was out there. People was fighting, people was smoking, people was drinking, all this other stuff. And it was kind of a insight to say, wow, like what were we doing? What was the thing? What was the racism from the police? What was this experience? And I started to suddenly start to face a side of myself that I hadn't faced for a long time, which was these teenage years and this kind of traumatic, not say traumatic, I'll say turbulent time in Australia. And I started to revisit things, talk to people, connect the dots, and suddenly I was like, you know what? I'm okay being you know, partly Australian. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that my mom's got Australian. I've got Australian
Mm.
citizenship through my mom. I'm okay with that. That's not a bad thing. A lot of people would love to be in that position. Don't look at it as a sign of shame. You know, embrace it. Say to yourself, you have something that a lot of people don't have, which is the benefit of going to multiple places. Start to look at it as a benefit rather than a point of shame. And so I started to say, you know what? I am multiple things. I'm British, Jamaican, and Australian. And I would say the Australian part, and I would say that's part of it. You know, when I sent this article into this thing called Growing Up African in Australia, and suddenly the world didn't seem like such a scary place anymore. You know, it suddenly felt like a place where I had connected all the dots of my whole life. It wasn't like I was trying to blank out parts of my life and imagine they never happened. And
Mm.
started to just see it as one narrative of, yeah, you've just been through a lot of change. You're a person who's had to have friends and lose them, and have friends and lose them, and it's okay, you know. And real people will always be there. UK will always be there for you. Australia will always be there for you. Jamaica will always be there for you, and just to embrace the whole complexity of it all.
So, when you finished high school, when you're 18, is that when
Mm.
you went to the UK to pursue your because my understanding is that she started doing a bit of script writing, right?
Mm.
So when did you transition into now writing plays and
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So, all right. So I went to it, yeah. So high school finished. I had beef with a lot of people, had a lot of fights that year, whatever.
a lot
Then
of
I was
fire?
like, you know what? And the thing is, even in my area, even my local area, with other people in Iran, I had beef. So it was just crazy, you know. And so I said to myself, look, you know what? Let's go back to the UK. I worked in a factory in Rockley for about 5 weeks, just 5 weeks, smashed weeks of work, got my ticket, and came back to the UK to live with my granddad in Wembley. And from that point, I basically did a degree in philosophy and creative writing. So creative writing into philosophy. And I got my thing. And that's when I was writing. So I was writing articles, I was writing short stories, I was writing essays, a lot of the things at uni. I did a lot of writing at that time. But it's only when I went to Australia when I was 25 that someone saw my work on my articles and everything and my stuff. And she said to me, you know, we are going to do a theatre production. And I know you had said that you were interested in doing some theatre. I read your work and I love it. Would you like to come and help me write this piece? And
Mm.
I was really excited about that. I was like, there was a moment I was like, yeah, like I would love to do that. I feel like my writing has been there my whole life, but no one outside of my friends and family has validated my writing. So I was like, perfect. Let's go and you know, like check you and we'll talk. And suddenly it was a kind of magical moment. You know, people have these magical moments with their craft or whatever, their sports or whatever. And it was a thing where basically I wrote a script, and it was a little bit of a, it wasn't too long, but it was something I just wrote in on the spot. And I just said it was about the play was about colorism, and I just wrote this idea of there was these black brothers, and they were there, and they were looking across, and they were seeing these girls at the club or whatever, and there was a mixed race girl, and there was a brown skin girl, and there was a black, and there was a dark skin girl, and they see them, and whatever, and one of the guys basically starts saying all this kind of toxic stuff about how light skinned women are better than dark skinned women, but he's saying it in a joke. So he's saying it in a way where he's like, a light skinned woman like that is like it's like a caramel coming straight out the wrapper. When you put it in your mouth, it gets so gooey. He said, it's like a chai latte in the morning, and the cinnamon. You sip of that, and I go for the rest of the day. Actually, you know what? She's like a jar full of honey. I put the spoon in, lift it up to the sky, and then dribble it into my mouth, right? And it was this kind of sexual, kind of jokey lines. But as soon as he said these lines, people in the other actors were like laughing, like, "Yo, that's funny. That's funny." And as soon as I started to see that, I was like, "Oh man, I feel like this is what I've been looking for my whole life, was this kind of validation of my writing, and seeing it, not just somebody emailing me and telling me, 'Oh, your writing is good.' It was like I can immediately see the reaction of the audience and know that that was funny or that was impactful. And so that was the starting point. I was 26 at the time. And at that point, I knew that that was something I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was just to write stories on theatre and on film and have people be able to embrace it and engage with it. That was, I would say, the turning point.
What was it called?
It was called Skin Deep.
Skin Deep. Oh, you actually released it, yeah.
Yeah, Skin Deep. So that was one of that was the first thing. But that wasn't my first. Sorry, that wasn't the play that I did myself. So that was a collaboration of writers. So that was essentially about 4 writers involved with that, and I wrote about 3 scenes of the entire play, and that was it. Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that was the first time that anything had been shown in that kind of capacity. It was still never officially published, but that was the first thing that was ever, put in stone. It was an event. People could watch it. Yeah.
And when did you write? What was the next play that you wrote?
Okay. The next thing we wrote was a film called My Win Is Yours. That was the first. That was the first thing I did.
The most popular
entirely
one,
my own writing.
To discuss about the play that you made, My Win Is Yours. How did the process start? How did you start with let's start first with the script. How did you come across writing it?
Okay, so this is interesting. It kind of came out of nowhere. So basically, the film, it was just a thing where I was with one of my mates, and he was doing he was filming me doing some photography in Mount Kufa, the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he just said, I'd like to do more with the video. Like, that would be cool to do something with video. Like, it's quite cool. And I said, yeah, okay, let me think about that. And I went and I kind of thought to myself, well, I've already just done this thing with Skin Deep. I have people who are actors. I know people who are actors. And I know that we were looking for another project to do. So why don't we try to do a film? And so I had a meeting with people, and everyone was like kind of saying, yeah, let's try to do something. So I'd never done a film before. And we were kind of coming in it raw without anyone really having any experience beyond the theatre. So anyway, I got to writing, and I wrote it quite similarly to how I wrote in Skin Deep. So I wrote, and the dialogue is very theatre-like. It's more theatre than film. The scenes are kind of longer scenes with quite a lot of dialogue, and the people have to memorize the dialogue before they get to the scene and all this sort of stuff. And anyway, we ended up having somebody who was a kind of independent documentary filmmaker who had worked on projects all around the world. His name was Nate Van Door. He was he's also Jamaican. His mom's Jamaican. He was born in Sydney, I think, and his dad is Fijian Indian. Anyway, he kind of validated our stuff because he had done film before, and he would say, "That's a great storyline. Why don't I'll film it for you." And so we started working with him, and essentially the whole project from beginning, writing to rehearsing, because we do a lot of rehearsals when we do our stuff, to actually filming it, to editing, to completing it, took about basically a year. So a year from beginning, talking about it, writing it, to actually the whole thing being completed took about a year. And that gave us all a lot of experience in terms of just film in general, but also how to develop something which is a bigger project, because Skin Deep was what it was, but it was a it was a theatre production which only took a few months versus a film which took us a whole year. And from that point, the idea of big projects and you know, just seeing the end goal of different things and seeing how they could work out, it just changed drastically because suddenly we weren't just guys mucking about with a camera saying, "Oh, we can do a bit of film." It was like, "Oh, well, I'm a filmmaker now. Wow, I didn't realize I'd be, but I'm here now." And then I just was able to just network with a lot of other people and start coming out with other projects. So Dominoes and Run was a theatre production, which was an hour and 20 minutes, which was put on a lot of different theatres. Fringe Brisbane, Backbone Festival, and it was like I guess it was a combination of a couple of things. So first of all, me finally getting my work validated made me more excited to do work. Secondly, people would say to us like, "When's the next thing coming out? When's the next thing coming?" And I was always able to say, "Well, we're working on this, we're working on this, we're working on that." And so for about 2.5 years, or yeah, 2.5 years, I just kept coming out with new work, theatre stuff, and that was it basically.
What's your evaluation of the creative arts in Brisbane?
Okay, so that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. So I'll be real with you. I'll be real with you. I feel like Brisbane is a double-edged sword, in the sense of like not a massive population, but it's there. The infrastructure is there. You know, you can buy cameras, you can hire out venues, you can do all sorts of things for cheaper than elsewhere in the world. You know, like to do the kind of things that we were doing in Brisbane, I would find it difficult to do it in London just because people don't have the free time. It's hard to get venues for cheap, and even camera equipment is more expensive. So Brisbane is this great place where it's not a massive city, but it's still a city. It's a globalized city, and it's a city where you have access to a lot of different things. So you have a lot of people who are artists in Brisbane, which is great. And people will spend their time to go and check out a new work. They can say, "Oh, well, look, I've seen this advertised. Let me go and support this local art," which is great because a lot of times you don't have that in Jamaica, you don't have that in Britain because the idea is if I don't know you and you're not very well known, what's the point of supporting you? You know, and so it's a really supportive atmosphere in Brisbane. But it's a double-edged sword because you also have a lot of people who are not very good artists and they're doing stuff and everyone's going, "Yeah, that's great as well." And it's like, yeah, but there has to be a level of like judgment here. We have to be looking for genuinely good work. It can't just be anything comes in and yeah, great one, because then it ends up becoming a little bit fake. And that's not good. You know, we have to be a little bit critical about the kind of things we put out. Especially when it comes to being like, you know, African people in Australia, there's a certain level of like awareness we have to have in terms of the kind of content we put out. And so, for example, you know, content which is like makes us look silly, us look uneducated and things like that. We have to be critical of that. We can't just say like, yes, great work. We have to say, hold on a minute, like that thing that you put out, it is a little bit too much American coded. It is a little bit too cliche. It is a little bit too, you know, we're the victims and the white people are the savior. Because there's been many, you know, there's been things that have been put out, and I think to myself, come on, guys, we have to be critical here. So I feel like it's a place where people come support and it's great and we love it. But there's a kind of side to it where it's almost like people was painted on smiles. You know, there's people say like, "Oh, you know, we love your work," to me, and I said, "Okay, what have you watched or whatever?" "Oh, I haven't watched any of it, but I love it." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I could." And I said to them, "Well, I could be crap. I could be really bad. You don't know if I'm good at what I do. Like, you know, don't just give me the happy, like over the top excitement if you don't know it. Like, there's a level of critical analysis that we need to have here, and I feel like Britain has it too far to the extreme. Like in London, to get anything off the ground, it's very difficult, and everyone's so cynical. But then Brisbane is almost too overly like excited and like positive about things when it's like it's not anything goes. You know, it's not anything goes. There has to be a level of actual genuine creative, you know, criticism that exists. You know, so but as an art scene, I think it's a growing place, and it's a kind of a place where you wouldn't expect such a great art scene to come from. You know, we usually think of like Melbourne or maybe possibly Sydney, but I think Brisbane has all the potential to be in the next 20 years a great creative hub. Yeah, I really have a positive view on the future of that city.
Because one of the biggest view I've heard from different people around Brisbane, they say that it's not diverse, and also there's no a possibility of someone growing in the industry.
Mm,
You're sort of kept in the same position as you were like years and years.
mm. Yeah, so that's one of the that's a really big difficulty, and I think it's also partly why I came back to Britain in a sense as well, because I feel like I kind of hit my ceiling in a way in Brisbane. Like I never got my work at like QPAC or like Le Boîte or anything like that, but I could see what those worlds were looking like. I could see what that would have been like because I saw people go through. And it wasn't as if, they got there and suddenly they were international. Suddenly they were, it's Australia's still got a very small population, 20 something million people. And then the amount of people who are of African, Caribbean background is so few, and we don't have the finances to be able to actually create industry. I feel like in America and to a lesser extent Britain, there is enough people who are supporters of black work where you can actually have a whole industry. You know what I mean? Like BET. And there's countless radio stations in the United States and networks and all the rest of it, which are catered to the African American experience. And in Britain, we have that to a lesser extent. We've got these great films throughout the years which have made a mark on British culture. We've got music and TV shows which made an impact on British culture. And I feel like there was enough going for, Black Britain for it to be a sustainable industry. Whereas in Australia, I feel like it's very difficult to get out of this to sort of grow from the space because a lot of the non-black writers, they might want a black character but not necessarily the kind of characters that we would like, and we don't have power to. I mean, I've seen it happen many times where people do the theatre performances and they're like sold out shows, but what's the next step? And we don't know what the next step is, and no one seems to want to give us the keys to know what the next step would be. And I think on the other hand, who's going to be a consumer of our work? Because for example, when I had Dominoes and Rum, which is the all black cast, I was handing out flyers, and this girl who was a kind of progressive left girl, she looked at the flyer and she said, "Oh, this looks great, but I don't know if I'd be able, like, I don't know if I'd fit in, if I could." And I'm thinking like, what are you talking about? It's a theatre show. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no fitting in involved here. You're just going to watch a theatre show. And I think that there is, I think Australia is such an early stage of multiculturalism where it's still it's still difficult to get consumers, and it's hard to get audience, and it's hard to get power. When power is the industry, and the industry is wouldn't say it's a closed door, but it's a club which is very difficult to get in. And I never cracked the code on how to get in. And even if you got in, would your thing be marketable to a wider audience within Australia, or is it a matter of looking elsewhere, looking for other like European countries to see the value in their work? I know there was one guy, I can't remember his name. He released a short film. He was from Melbourne, I believe, and it won a couple of awards in Europe in some sort of film festivals over there. Um, but I think on the other hand, I don't think it needs to be. I think if you're looking only for exposure and fame in the industry, you will be disappointed. And I think the better thing to think about is the idea that change happens over time. And so the work that we're doing, the work that other people in Australia are doing in Brisbane, will change things for the future, and people will be inspired by those things, and people will continue to make them. So, looking back at Britain, for example, if you think about the Windrush generation and my dad's generation and my granddad's generation and all those people who came to Britain at the time where they were a tiny minority of people, who working in the lowest paid jobs and working in NHS and all the rest of it, you would never think that we would have had the cultural impact on the world as Black British people as we do now. And so you have to see it in terms of a bigger historical narrative of small things change big things over time. And so, yes, maybe there's only a handful of people in Brisbane who are putting out work. Maybe there's a bigger group of people in Melbourne and Sydney, but ultimately we are the forefathers of what will come in the future. And that's what I try to think about.
So is the goal to grow the industry here in Australia or to go to Hollywood?
Well, I don't think Hollywood has ever been an option for any non-American writer, right? That's first of all number one. I think some British people were able to break through. Think about Steve McQueen, the writer of 12 Years a Slave. He was able to break through. I'm gonna Christopher Nolan, British writer. He was able to break through. And like I think a handful of British people are able to break through, but a lot of times when they break through, it's not British actors or anything. It's like an American thing, and I think there is some some small chance of breaking through in the industry in terms of your writing, but the chances are so slim. I think for me, my goal is more so just world cinema, world theatre, and to make impact in a non-American way. In terms of the world, because I'm not really interested in. I mean, look, American culture is American culture, but I don't know American culture, and I'm not really interested in writing work for an American audience. I think there's American people who would be interested in my work or stuff like that, and I have done collaboration interviews with American artists and everything. But for the most part, I feel like those people are the kind of abstract, more alternative Americans. I think if you talk about the mainstream consumerism and like audience in America, they're looking for American actors, well, American characters at least, American settings and American narratives, which I don't know about. And I'm more interested in telling stories from the Caribbean, Britain, and Australia. So I'm as long as people are watching my work, even if my audience is 5 people, it's never happened. But if that were to be the case, I feel like I'm doing my job. So I'm not relying on this kind of external validation from the United States or some massive big theater to say my work is good.
So in the screenwriting world, who inspires you?
Oh, okay, cool. I would say one of the biggest influences is, well, ironically, an American person. So this is Spike Lee. Spike Lee. I think he was one of my early inspirations because I guess that was the first time I had watched movies. I was about 14, 15, oh, 14, 15, probably 15 at the time when I first saw a Spike Lee movie. And it was kind of realizing that there's politics in movies. It isn't just like, a lot of the movies I watched before were like Eddie Murphy movies, Martin Lawrence, Will Smith, Wesley Snipes, all these kind of things which were either action or comedy, but they weren't necessarily dealing with a deeper issue. And watching Spike Lee movies kind of opened my eyes to the fact that, sorry, one second, there's a siren going by. Yeah, it opened my eyes to the fact that, like, there is a deeper nature to like Black culture, for example. There's a deeper nature to like human connection than just these comedies of these action. And so he was able to create characters which were based on his surroundings, on his neighborhood, and that was insightful to me. That was like kind of and realizing what he thought he wrote the movie. He didn't write it, but he put together the movie Malcolm X with Denzel Washington. That was impactful on me. Do the Right Thing, hugely impactful. Quite a lot of his work was powerful to me. And I feel like Skin Deep was definitely Spike Lee-esque in a way. And then later on from that, August Wilson, the writer of Fences, and a lot of other American kind of plays, some Caribbean writers. Who else we got? Oh yeah, I guess some of the more modern stuff. So like Safdie brothers, I think they're two Jewish American guys, but their stuff is really inspiring to me as well, just to kind of push the boundaries of like the kind of grittiness that you can put on film. And so yeah, I'd say so many inspirations, but I like usually writers who are either they've got some depth to their writing. It isn't just jokes, but people who also kind of trying to change the media, change the sort of the form of what film can be, and change the form of what theatre can be, and kind of being innovative in a way which is not conventional. So a lot of the conventional theatre, for example, is very much wrapped in a kind of classism, and people who go to theatre usually people who are able to afford it. And so like someone like William Shakespeare, I suppose, is an inspiration in a sense because he was writing for everybody, you know, and you know, he obviously focused on certain classes and whatever, but there was, you know, people who were able to go to the Globe Theatre were coming from a variety of backgrounds, and there was jokes in there which were, you know, people on the lower class would understand. You know, Dickens criticizing the middle classes and the aristocrats and the business owners and things like that. And so George Orwell, I suppose, is also absolutely an inspiration because he critiqued the system and was able to give voice to the voiceless in terms of the working class and the people who work in the mines. So I guess there's a kind of class consciousness, a kind of awareness of culture, and people like that who are able to kind of critique things. They've been hugely influential.
Because in your plays, you usually deal with a lot of serious topics like race, gender, social politics. How do you balance it out with, because one of your plays that you did was also a comedy. How do you balance it out so that your audience are getting everything that you want them to see, but also they're not missing the points?
Okay, that's an interesting question, man. Very good question. I would say that for me, it comes down to the fact that I've talked about all these different concepts, but most importantly, I want to entertain people. It's not to give somebody a message. So, like, my priority is entertaining, and then the secondary thing is if you get something from it, you get something from it. Because at the end of the day, I'm not here to educate my audience. I don't want to put the audience in a position where I'm telling them some lesson that they need to learn. Because ultimately, you know, you could look at my work and just find it entertaining. That's also good. Like there's no problem with that. You know, if you find a deeper message in it, great. You know, there's some people who were able to see messages which I didn't even intend to put in, which made sense. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So I prioritize entertaining over anything else, because at the end of the day, when you're watching films, when you're watching theater, the main thing is that you're away from work, you've come to enjoy yourself. I don't want you to come to my theater or turn on my show, my film, and you're there feeling depressed or you're feeling anxious, or, you know, I want you to ultimately enjoy the characters, and I want the characters to be lovable, and I want you to see yourself in their experiences. And if there's something you can take from it additionally, then that's a cherry on top. But it isn't my main aim, you know. And I feel like it comes with a certain level of experience to realize that your audience is not your class. You know, your audience is not your students where you're going to tell them something. You know, your audience is people who are showing you the respect to want to see what you see, and you owe them enough respect to try to entertain them the best you can.
So number one is entertaining. But you speak about serious issues though that are affecting communities here in Australia. Like for example, your win is yours. It deals with very, very intricacy things. How do you balance it out now to be able to maintain so that people can also see the comedy in it or the entertainment in it?
Well, I think the structure of that movie is kind of I think it starts off with a lot of comedic elements, and then halfway through, I think there ends up being no jokes for like the second half of the movie at all. It's tricky because I feel like you have to tell the story the way it needs to be told, in a sense of, you know, you can have your input and you can try to sculpt it in a particular way, but the story is going to speak for itself in a way. And if you're true to the story, then it will end up flowing. You know, if you're trying to like hold on to it too tightly and like, okay, I have to entertain it all the time, it's like, okay, well that's too much. You know, you kind of have to kind of sculpt it, and then you just let it flow as it goes. Because I've had times when I've had like, you know, certain theatre and certain film, and I've had a scene, and intuitively and with the actors, I just know it doesn't fit. It doesn't. We haven't been true to the character. We haven't been true to what they would say. And so, for example, there's a scene in Stop That Nonsense where the mom kind of listens to this son, and the son is complaining about something about his parent, how he was about his parents, and feeling frustrated. And initially, we had the mom kind of say, or something to the extent of like, "I understand, I get you, I hear you," you know, like understanding. And as soon as we did it, we just went like, hold on a minute, this is not what a mother would say. You know, a lot of mothers, they kind of avoid it. They don't want to acknowledge the problem. So what they would do is they would probably dismiss it in a subtle way, not dismiss it wholly, but they would try to change the topic. And so that's more true to what a mother would actually do. And so you have to stay true to what is kind of accurate in what the character would actually do, what the storyline actually needs. Sometimes the happy ending isn't what you're able to do because, unfortunately, if you make it a happy ending, it would be rushed, it would be forcing it, and it would be out of character. So you have to be true to it. And you know, without spoiling the ending of My Win Is Yours, we had a lot of discussion about the ending. We debated it so many times of what the ending should be because we didn't know whether it should be happy, whether it should be sad, whether it's supposed to be depressing, whether it's supposed to be uplifting. We didn't know how to sculpt it, and the ending we had worked. But still, people say to me, you know, what did that mean? What did it mean? And you know, so I think you have to kind of be you go in with the intention of entertaining, you go with the intention of telling a real story, and then whatever happens, whatever comes naturally, whatever it's supposed to be, will be, you know.
You make us, you know, with all your work that you've done, you entertain us and you also make us laugh. What makes Prince laugh?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So I think I don't know, my friend. I feel like I laugh every day. You know, I have like wrinkle marks on my face from laughing at things because I just find I find everything funny, man. Like you know, there's so many things I find you know kind of Caribbean stuff funny. I find you know like Nigerian stuff funny. You know, I find like kind of like dry British humor funny. I find American slapstick stuff funny.
Yeah.
I'm just somebody who likes to laugh, and I see that I see the humor in people in a way that people don't know it. Because somebody, I think one of my actors, Donnie, he said he was saying to me at the very beginning when we like after we started to work on my movies, he said you know, you laugh at everything, man. But I don't know if you're happy. I don't know what does it represent. And he was saying to somebody, he said, you know, you have to be Prince. He laughs when he's happy, but he also laughs when things are funny. So you know, you don't always know. So I'm somebody who finds a lot of humor in things. My parents had a great sense of humor. Yeah, I feel like it's been a coping mechanism for anything. Is finding the humor in it, you know, and kind of you know, enacting things. So, for example, I like a lot of social observation. You know, you're working in a place and there's these kind of characters, these people that are around you, and somebody's like the power hungry person, somebody's like the lazy person, somebody's the, I don't know, the insecure person or whatever. And I kind of start to formulate these kind of personalities and when humor in it. And so and finding the ability to kind of act out those personalities and kind of see the funny side of things. So honestly, you know, what makes me laugh? I laugh every day, my man. I laugh at so many things because but again, I think it's kind of a disposition. I think I've always had a kind of humorous disposition, and I think a lot of people on social only who only know me on social media and don't know my actual work or don't know me as a human being think I'm quite a serious person because I put like politics online, whatever. But no, I love laughing, man.
And what inspires you in everything that you do, apart from just acting? What inspires you?
Okay, yeah. So that's a good question. You also really good questions, by the way.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I would say that what inspires me is my dad. I would say my dad is my hugely inspiration in terms of me. I feel like he
That's
had
so cute. So
yeah, I
cool.
feel he had an idea of like he always had big dreams for me. And he wanted me to be a musician, he wanted me to be an athlete, he wanted me to be a lot of different things. But I you know when they end at the beginning of a novel they say they write oh for my wife or for my child or whatever. I think that you know if I wrote a novel I would write you know for my dad and my mom because they always loved us to be they used to push us to a lot of sports, a lot of different crafts and everything I wanted they were able to get. You know, if I want to play saxophone, they will go spend $2,000 on a saxophone, get me the saxophone. You know, my parents don't come from a very well-off background, but they always did everything to try and make us what we are. So I feel like I'm doing what they want me to do, and to have them at my theatre shows and have them excited about what I create, it's a joy, you know. So I'd say that primarily, and then also just culture in general, you know. Like I feel like people in this world, you know, as Black people, but also just as human beings across the board, we're all confused. We're all trying to find a path. We're all trying to find our sense of community and consolation and all the rest of it. And I feel like now that I have enough people looking at my work, I feel inspired to keep putting stuff out because people, it seems to move people, it seems to touch people, and I'm happy. And even if it's a small thing of just seeing the actor kind of get really joyful about learning about the character in a particular way and going their own way, that brings me joy. And I feel like beyond money or anything like that, this is something that I feel like I've been yearning for my whole life, and I feel like now that I've got it, you know, I'm happy about it. And just to tell stories that haven't been told before, because I was talking about Hollywood before, and a lot of these Hollywood things, they're just rehashed stuff. They're sequels, they're prequels, you know, endlessly. But you know, a movie like Sinners, for example, like it's like original, you know, I feel like I want to make original things which are based on non-mainstream topics. You know, I'd love to, for example, do a documentary on the Senegalese religion of Baiful. You know, I'd love to do a documentary on that and see what that's like. I'd like to do a documentary. Well, we've done a documentary on the previous super middleweight champion of Australia, who was a Senegalese boxer from Paris. I want to tell stories which are not very well known, so that I can, you know, I can learn from the experience, but also to kind of shine a light on the lesser known stories of our everyday, because I feel like everyone's got a beautiful story to tell in them somewhere. And I'm just learning. I'm just interested in learning about the world outside of just what you're able to watch and listen to already, but actually create work which is innovative. You know.
And what's the best advice somebody has ever given you?
Ooh. Um. Okay. So I had this lady called Catherine. So she used to work at this theatre company, Backbone Theatre, and she was one of the first people that said I had talent. And she called me after the final show of Skin Deep, and she called me and she said that you have so much talent and you don't even know that you've got the talent, but you, and that was like I didn't cry, but that was kind of emotional for me, because I was like, raw, like, oh well, like you know, when you go through your whole life, you're like, you know, you feel like, oh, I've got talent at something, I'm good at something, and finally for people for her to tell me that, and to see, like, you know, Brisbane audiences and even, you know, British audiences, when they watch my film, to look at my stuff and say, this is stuff I never thought about, this, or this relates to me. I would say that was it. So that advice that she told me, it was kind of advice, but essentially she was just saying, keep going, you know, keep going and doing your thing. That was important. And I guess also another guy called Nate Van Door, the director guy, a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. He just said, you know, people talk about doing work and having a break. Don't do the break. You know, do the work. The work is the enjoyment. The work is the fun. Don't worry about that break stuff. You know, just focus on doing the job. And that those two, I guess, comments were insightful to me, because I realized, first of all, I've got talent. And second of all, just keep doing it. There's no time for this sort of like, oh, I've got a mental health break. Blah, blah. No, just smash it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Attack writing and filmmaking like an athlete attacks their sport, like a rapper attacks their rap. You know, these things need to be put out. Don't get too emotional about this stuff. You've done the thinking, you've done the living. Now just make it happen.
And what's your final message to our audience and our viewers?
Okay, yeah, okay. Interesting. I would say, so that's a tricky one, but I would say it's hard not to overthink things, but I think we all have a job to do. You know, we all have a job to do. And there's no point sitting on the side thinking like you're not going to do it. You need to make like a vision board. I've got a vision board down there. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a vision board. And I put what I need to do for each month. So by July, I'm going to have this done. I'm going to have that done. Get serious about it. Whether it's the running, whether it's like whatever the thing is. If there's a sense that you're supposed to be doing something in the back of your head and you're not doing it, don't shy away from that, because that shying away is only gonna lead to years or whatever of feeling like you're missing something. You know, if there's a message in your head, follow it. It might not always be the thing that ends up staying with you for life. It could just be a phase. It could just be a moment to experience something. But the point is, if there's a desire for some sort of craft or some sort of hobby or some sort of thing, and you know that that's there, don't shy away from it. Don't say like, oh, I want to do this. Like, yeah, just do it then. Like, when do you want to have it done? Let's start. Let's start even small. Let's start. When does it start? In 3 months, let's do it. You know, whatever it is, just try to smash it, and don't worry about like, oh, maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. You won't know until you do it. So just get started. Write your journal. Stick it on the wall. Stick your thing up. You know, don't be shy of it. Don't be scared of it. Look at it, relate to it, and do it. You know, that's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Prince, for giving us your time to really talk to inspire others. And I believe that a lot of people will get a lot of inspiration from this. And maybe if you can just give a shout out to some of the actors who are based in Brisbane,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay.
for
Cool. So
greeting.
all right. Well, let's do it. So okay. This is hard because I don't want to miss anybody out.
Oh,
Okay. So
so people put you under pressure, but I just wanted you to sort of to say your greetings to some of us here in Brisbane, so that they can see this and be able to say, "Oh, Prince is still
mm,
thinking about us."
yeah. All right. Well. Okay. Let's go. So I would say Donington Garbo, Fikrete Bushel, Kevin Fredman, Stephen Anzo, Love Wanto, Myris. We got Peter. We got Peter Barrett. We got Winnie Mzembe. We got Pachara Mzembe, Gideon Mzembe, George. Anik. Oh man, the list is so long.
Yeah,
I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss. I don't want
oh,
to
for
miss
sure,
anybody. But
for sure.
anybody who's worked with me, who's done work with me, who knows what they, Martel, he's worked with Backbone, UFAS. Anybody who's done anything with me, I
Mm,
still got mad love for you. Even if we don't talk often, even if we haven't spoken to in years, I got mad love for you because you saw something in me which I needed to feel. You validated me. We worked together. People that are doing their craft and doing their thing, enough love to everybody out there who's doing it because without us doing it together, we couldn't have done it alone. It's not a solo sport. It's not a one man army. It's a collaboration. So I'm the kind of person I don't speak a lot about emotion a lot on my social media, but truth is, enough love to everybody out there who've done work with and who's doing their craft.
thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, and thank you, man. You've been a great interviewer. You've asked the
Uh,
perfect
uh,
questions, and
Thank you
keep
very
doing what
much.
you're doing.
Thank you very much.
All right, my brother. All right, man.
Thank
Stay
you.
blessed.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us on another powerful conversation where we get to speak with the change makers in our community and also in our society. Thank you very much for continuing to follow Inspire Others with Gloire, and thank you very much for continuing to support us. Our mission is that each one teach one. We want to empower you so you can go and inspire others in your community, in your life, and in your societies. Thank you very much for another powerful message. We want to be able to give you more episodes. So continue to follow Inspire Others and continue to support us as we will be supporting you. Peace.